Thank you, Madam Speaker. Every woman who has had the privilege to learn from seeing the world in multiple contexts has had to pay it forward by lifting others up so women can pick up and carry on the conversation in other spaces that matter. And that is why I am here today to speak about catalyzing gender-responsive climate finance. Much has been said about the climate finance gap and how we need more funding to solve our planet's problems with global warming, how we cope with extreme weather events, and how we intend to address slow onset events like sea level rise, ocean acidification, and biodiversity loss. So we do what we can with what we've got. Climate finance refers to the financial resources and instruments needed to support urgent climate action, and it covers the broad spectrum of capital ranging from grants from multilateral funds, commercial and concessional loans from financial institutions, green bonds, and other forms of resource mobilization. Here, we work off the premise that avoidance and adaptation will give us the biggest bang for our buck. It is more cost-effective to invest in preemptive actions to lower or minimize the risk of climate hazard, to protect from the consequences of climate change. So why does climate finance have to be gender responsive? Because aid has to go where it's needed, and women are disproportionately vulnerable to climate change impact. The 2023 Gender Assessment Food and Agriculture Report on Adapting Philippine Agriculture to Climate Change noted that it has been estimated that women and children are 14 times more likely to die during a disaster, whose frequency and intensity are increasing due to climate change. In addition, the 2022 World Bank Country Climate and Development Report noted that when responding to climate-induced crop failures, more women than men fall into chronic indebtedness from microfinance or informal borrowing from their social networks. And as a result, women might also be more likely to migrate to improve challenged livelihoods. This is why we need to catalyze gender-responsive finance. Roughly half of the Philippines is made up of women, and we are not just Filipinos, we are also global citizens. And in matters that concern our planet, our interests as Filipinos and as citizens of the world are mutually reinforcing, not mutually exclusive. At COP27, it was mentioned that the green transition will require us to transform almost everything we do today, from construction, housing, food, agriculture, transportation, and energy. Society will change since we cannot continue with business as usual, and so gender has to be mainstreamed from day one. The transition is not just about justice between people in the country, but also justice between states and justice between generations, ours and the future. Women clearly have to be part of that conversation addressing systemic change, immersed in the policy crafting and implementation aspects of financing climate action. We need an overarching and coherent policy framework to mobilize capital towards the change we seek. And so I propose that we first need to support this gender lens investing by collecting disaggregated data on the impact of climate change and national disasters on women and girls, and establishing and maintaining the National Adaptation Plan sectoral registries to spotlight women as agents of change and affirm women's work. On the collection of disaggregated data, to encourage gender lens investing, we need to ensure that we track, for instance, climate migration, which we often see when farming livelihood is lost, resulting in women needing to migrate for work. Women do a lot of things, but we lack the evidence that measures what they do to develop policies that squarely address the impact of climate change on women, because what is measured gets managed. In articulating the Philippines' strategy towards inclusive and gender-responsive climate action, the Climate Change Commission mentions two challenges. First, the lack of gender audit tools to monitor and evaluate gender considerations in climate action, and second, a gender disaggregated database on relevant aspects of the Philippines climate change work. Gender disaggregation becomes easier to track, though, through financial technology platforms, connecting the last mile to the digital economy and adding to rural communities' income streams while consolidating digital assets and increasing the resilience of supply chains. Innovative financial products and the targeted support given to women through the fintech ecosystem facilitate data disaggregation and value chain linkages and support through business mentoring, digital transformation, market access, and accelerated innovation and growth for women-led MSMEs. A second point that I might like to make in this request that we support gender lens investing is through the establishment and maintenance of registries for women to access climate finance to bring about gender-just solutions. We need to spotlight and affirm women's place in the 8 key sectors that are focal points of our national adaptation plan and key to our educational growth and social well-being. That's agriculture, fisheries, and food security. Second, water resources. Third, health. Fourth, ecosystems and biodiversity. Fifth, cultural heritage, population displacement, and migration. Sixth, land use and human settlements. Seventh, livelihoods and industries. And eighth, energy, transport, and communications. Although women are disproportionately vulnerable to climate change impacts, we are also the solution aggregators, innovators, decision makers, and effective agents of change. In fact, the FAO study I mentioned earlier made reference to a 2015 study that noted that there are more female agricultural extension workers in 2 Eastern Visayas provinces, 65% in Leyte and 63% in Eastern Samar. However, we have yet to see a registry system that recognizes the way that women in their own capacities move the needle so government can implement a targeted capacitation response. For example, women farmers need help getting access to credit, but are not afforded gender parity in the registry system for basic sectors in agriculture. Under the present data gathering setup, a married female farmer is not registered and classified as a farmer in her own right. Her name is only mentioned as an adjunct of her farmer husband, who is the official farmer on record. This makes it difficult for women farmers to take out formal credit or insurance, which usually requires the husband to be the co-signatory, completely ignoring the plight of households headed by females, which are some of the most marginalized and underserved in rural areas. A second point that I would like to make in regards gender lens investing is that we need communication platforms that mainstream gender in green competencies in the labor market. Blended finance can be tapped to fund programs that are gender responsive, for instance, mainstreaming gender by ensuring that women have a seat at the table. However, we need communication platforms to build the ecosystem to scale. This means that our gender disaggregated data should also show up in the communication platforms for green skills and competencies to enable women and girls to effectively participate in climate action and climate finance decision-making as we strive for gender parity in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to optimize our human resources. Unless our girls and women learners receive the green competencies needed, we are likely to see the same pattern of vulnerability from one generation to the next. Skilling, as you know, is very nuanced and service levels are very competitive. So we need to give our girls the tools and skill sets they need to properly service the ecosystems of developed and developing markets. Capacity building and technology transfer of green competencies should also address gender-differentiated vulnerabilities. For instance, flexible learning arrangements given the many hats women wear, but not reinforce stereotypes of women's roles in society and the workplace. A credible scaling plan that draws from green competencies and innovates across the supply chain ensures that interventions have the social impact sought. We move at the speed of trust, so to bring about impactful collaboration and the strategic leveraging of public and private resources, we need more granular, regional, and LGU-level data in our due diligence data rooms populated from interoperable systems. This will not only expose stakeholders to best practices, updated risk assessments, and adaptation deficits, but also give us a clearer picture of how systems, timelines, applications, logistics, and practical issues can align. This is particularly important in the ecosystem building that needs to happen as we design, accelerate, and connect financial products and services to global trade. I will stop here because of time constraints, but allow me to close on a personal note. The disruption of ecosystems due to climate change exacerbates threats to human security. Any discussion on climate finance is predicated on peace and order being established in the peripheries and justice being effectively and efficiently administered. It should happen in an atmosphere where women can safely travel to and from work and not get ambushed while hitching a ride with the barangay captain, where barangay officials can roll out services and educational assistance without fear of being killed in the course of their duties, where aggrieved women can sue without fear of reprisal. It's all very well to speak of how we might grow the pie for everyone, women included, but to grow the pie, we need peace. Data gathering and public service administration needs to happen in a space where people feel safe, secure, heard, and respected. And so I call upon our law enforcement and crime investigation specialists to work with us at the grassroots level and help us safely carry out the catalytic work needed for rural communities to survive and thrive. Thank you, Madam Speaker.